I'm MyRadar meteorologist Matthew Cappucci here in Boulder County, Colorado. 2021 featured scores of climate-fueled disasters, but nobody expected what happened here on December 30th. Strong winds brought down a power line, igniting a wildfire that would rapidly spread and change hundreds of lives.
Louisville is like it's been the ideal place to raise children. It was voted like the best place to live in the United States 4 years in a row. It's the sweetest community that I've ever been in my life.
Rebecca Hudson has lived in Louisville, Colorado and Boulder County for 23 years. She raised her 2 sons there, enjoyed gardening, and describes her neighborhood as a quaint, tight-knit community. When she and her adult children boarded a flight to Puerto Rico for vacation around the holidays, she never imagined she'd return home to ashes. At 10:30 a.m. on December 30th, a grass fire broke out near State Highway 93 in Boulder County. Initial reports suggest a power line down by strong winds may have been to blame. Others cite a shed that burned. Before long, the flames were an inferno. It quickly engulfed entire neighborhoods, including that of Rebecca Hudson. Her boyfriend had been visiting that morning to tend to her dogs when he alerted her about a grass fire in the area.
At that time, he texted me and said there's a grass fire, and he was right there by my house. If he would have thought it was going to be something real, he could have just run into my house. He would have had an hour to grab things, but there was no indication that it was going to be something serious. And he ended up leaving the area because it was smoky and uncomfortable. And an hour later, it was locked down.
It took only an hour for strong winds topping 75 miles per hour to fan the flames 3 miles into Louisville, with tens of thousands ordered to evacuate around lunchtime. By dinner, the fire had swallowed 1,600 acres and would quadruple in size overnight. The towns of Louisville, Broomfield, and Superior were evacuated.
I looked at a map of all of the places that were impacted, and I saw that there was a house on the corner in my neighborhood where I live, and I saw that the other coordinate was the police department, which is down at the base of the hill. And I just, given those 2 coordinates, it would be impossible for it not to just wipe out that whole neighborhood, and that's what it did.
Winds rolling down the mountains played a huge role in fanning the flames. They saw gusts of 75 miles per hour or more, which is roughly hurricane force.
The strong winds were the result of downsloping, or air flowing down the mountains. That causes parcels of air to dry up and accelerate in the valleys east of the Front Range. A gust to 108 miles per hour was recorded 3 miles south-southwest of Boulder at 2:25 p.m. on December 30th. Marshall gusted to 90 miles per hour and Crispin to 102.
The erratic winds caused erratic results. Here you see this fence in good shape. Over here, these posts have all burnt down, nothing left. This home still has their umbrella intact, their Christmas tree up inside. This home over here is entirely uninhabitable.
Tragically, the flames claimed Hudson's home, leaving nothing but an empty foundation.
I've spent the last 22 years building the gardens around my house and creating a lot of art. I do these big mosaic windows, and all of our windows had mosaic stained glass in them. And so like every little corner of our house was kind of, made to be special.
Officials estimate at least 1,000 structures succumbed to the Marshall Fire, racking up a $500 million price tag as the most expensive wildfire in Colorado state history.
So we'll see how it is when insurance wants to pay for a rebuild and what that looks like. It wouldn't be my desire to be in the same place. I'd like to create something new.
The damage is done, and now the long road to recovery begins. Many folks filling out insurance claims, but here's the thing. Even if they can rebuild, they still own the same land that looks like home no more.
There's nothing left, like there's no landmarks. So, that beautiful tree by the lake and things that become part of who you are all gone.
Barely a week after the fire, you can still smell it in the air. The landscape's still smoking. Now, a blanket of white snow on the ground, one small piece that helped extinguish the flames. Boulder saw only 0.4 inches of precipitation between October 1st and December 30th. Their snow, the latest first snow on record. Their temperatures, the 3rd highest on record. Even before the disaster, residents said they knew something wasn't normal.
I can tell you that in the last 4 months, I've been hiking regularly in the Flatirons, and every time we go hiking, we've made comments, this is not normal. This weather is not normal. There's a tragedy is going to happen.
A tragedy indeed. Hudson, who's from Michigan, said she's used to seeing wildfires on the news in California, but never expected one like that in Colorado. But with nearly a quarter of the state under extreme drought and the effects of climate change worsening, it was only a matter of time. George Greenwood is a longtime volunteer firefighter with the Left Hand Fire Protection District in Boulder. He explains that heavy rainfall in the spring caused more grass to grow. Then came the dry season.
When we see a very wet spring, those fuels tend to double or triple in height and are much more dense. They still cure in the fall, late summer. Now that we have these fall and winter fire seasons, there's a lot of fuel to burn.
The top 20 largest wildfires in Colorado state history have all occurred in the past 20 years. That's no coincidence. The Marshall Fire and the Middle Fork Fire were among the most destructive in the Centennial State's history, torching 991 structures and enough to melt metal.
Greenwood also notes that the lack of snow made it easier for fires to spread.
And another thing that complicated the situation with Marshall was the fact that we hadn't had snow until after the event. And all of that cured grass, tall cured grass, was still standing vertically instead of being matted down. And that vertical fuel component led to much more rapid spread of flames.
There's no denying climate change. To deny climate change is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the facts are there. There is no snow in Boulder. We've already passed the new year. We just had our first snow the day after the fire. That's the first snow that we've had in Boulder. It doesn't even make sense. And let's just say it's an odd year. Well, look at all the years before where we're having less and less moisture, more extreme weather.
In the past, the idea of climate change was intangible, a distant threat that loomed far in the future. Now it's creeping into everyday life and hitting progressively closer to home.
The portraits of devastation are utterly terrifying. Behind me, you see the skeletons, the metal remnants of cars that were burned in the fire. Over here, get this. One side of this traffic light melted in the intense heat. The other side, the traffic lights still work, and this intersection still flowing as normally, thanks to the localized nature of this event.
By pure luck, some families were able to settle back in their dwellings once the fire was extinguished. Others returned to collect what they could find scattered about empty slab foundations.
One of the eeriest elements of this fire was seeing what burns and what doesn't. Behind me, you can see homes are destroyed, only their foundations remaining. Screws on the ground, pieces of metal, ornamental furniture, and over there, a cooking urn that people use for campfires.
One of these homes on Spyglass Circle in Louisville, just off Dillon Road, was burnt to the ground, but the children's toy in their backyard didn't melt. The residents next door remained fully intact.
The fire was a catastrophe of caprice. Some neighborhoods burnt to the ground with nothing but charred rubble, others next door entirely untouched. This fence still in pristine condition despite being feet away from disaster.
Greenwood says that firefighters have predictive models they use to inform their wildland firefighting techniques. When the Marshall Fire moved into neighborhoods, however, all bets were off.
Once that fire gets into that subdivision and is truly wind-driven, there's really nothing you can do as a firefighter other than to get ahead of the fire and evacuate. There's nothing really that you can do as fire is jumping from house to house to house. But they cleared 30,000 people out of the path of that fire.
At least one person was killed in the fire, their remains found on January 5th. Another 2 people were reported missing. The fire also killed a number of animals.
Many residents evacuated so quickly they weren't able to take their pets with them. Now volunteers have placed food and water all across the burned areas.
Was your dog all right? I know. Did your
My
boyfriend...
dog is fine. My dog is fine. My ex-husband has my dog, and Suki's still fine. My cat was locked in the house, so she's not around anymore. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Officials are still warning those in the area of poor air quality thanks to ash and aerosols, volatile organic compounds, and other toxic gases. While residents collect themselves and begin to rebuild their lives, the question turns to whether or not they're ready for the next climate-catalyzed disaster. In 2017, the EPA warned that Colorado's changing climate was likely to further increase the risk of wildfires. They note that the size and the number of wildfires in Colorado have increased substantially since 1985.
The impacts of these fires, both acreage-wise and loss-wise, is getting bigger on an annual basis. And, we all believe that weather is driving these fires.
And if we don't figure out how to navigate our lifestyles or to live in a way that we can, be supported with warmer weather. I mean, we're going to continue to be reactive and rebuild houses, and it's just not a sustainable formula. This is not going to be the last fire in our area. It's not possible. It's so dry. It's so dry there right now, and there's so much to burn.
Follow MyRadar on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Download MyRadar on iOS, Android, Amazon Alexa, Xbox, and Windows.